Hello, and welcome to Learning Music with Pat. You know, I've never made any big thing about it, but in woodwinds, I can talk about the open-hold instruments and the closed-hold instruments. This would not apply to brass, it wouldn't apply to percussion or any of the stringed instruments, but I will be talking with people, and I guess I just didn't think of it because it never brought it up. I will say, well, this is a closed-hold instrument, or this is an open-hold instrument. What does it actually mean if you hear somebody talking about that? Well, I brought in my Germeint Hart piccolo. You've seen it before. I brought in for the last show that I did. And this would be considered to be a closed-hole instrument. Now, why would it be closed? Because when you take and look at the keys, I'm just going to roll it around. You can see a little bit of the pads and the keys here as I roll it around. Hopefully it's in the right position for that. I can see some reflection, so I'm assuming that's it. And when you take and put your hands on an instrument to finger it so that the pads and the keys close, then that's considered to be a closed-hold instrument. Now, most of the time, flutes are closed-hold. Saxophones are, of course, and other kinds of woodwind instruments. The flutes are usually, but there is such a thing as an open-hold flute. So I want to show you a picture of that today. And but let me just get back to this. I put my fingers down. It takes and closes the key. The pads are right underneath the key. I close those off, and then that closes that. It makes the tube longer. If I were to leave these open, I'd get a higher pitch because it's like you got an opening. All these would be open. But when I start to close them, I close them with my fingers, and the pads go down, and so therefore it's closed hold. Now, if you were to take something like a recorder, of course that's open hold because you don't have any pads and you don't have any keys. Well, I know that the basses do, and I've got a tenor that does a little bit. But all these holes are open. They look like little black spots here, but they're all open. How do I close them to make a tube longer? I just put the pads of my hands down, the pads of my fingers down, and that closes them off. I can close off as many as I want. That makes this, it is an open hold instrument because everything is open. I close it by the use of my hands. Now I wanted to show you something that I thought was interesting, and I never thought about it until last night. But this is a photocopy of the piccolo that you just saw. So I'm going to take that down. And if you look here, here's a flute. This happens to be an open-hold flute because I don't know how much you can see about this, but most of the keys would be closed, but I've got two right here. You can see little black spots there, and I've got three down here, and they're open hold. There's actually a little hole in these keys so that unless you press it closed, that remains open. It's like there's a hole in there. Now, these flutes that are open hold are very, very expensive. They're very expensive flutes, and you pay a lot more for them. What would be the reason why you would want to have these open, and then you press, if you want them closed, you press them down with your finger like it was a recorder?
Fold the sweater back.
Oh, well, let me show.
No, your sweater. Fold your sweater, your microphones.
Oh, sorry.
There you go.
Okay, so I had to make an adjustment here. Supposing, and I'm going to hold this piccolo open again. Supposing I had these two keys right here that I normally would close to play it. Supposing I had a hole in each key, just these two, this one and this one, then it would be considered to be an open hold piccolo. Supposing I also had this, and this open, supposing that there was a hole in each one of these three keys, and so I have basically 5 keys that can be opened. And the way to close them is just to close my fingers over them and keep them shut like that. Then it becomes closed. But without that, if I have a hole in those keys, then it becomes an open hold instrument. What would be the reason that anyone would want to buy an instrument that normally has pads and is normally considered to be closed hole because it is covered by keys, but you want to have them open? Why would they want to have them open? Like in this flute right here, the piccolo and flute are very much similar in terms of fingerings and so forth, so I didn't bring in a flute. It was too much to carry this morning. But here's a hole, here's a hole, here's a hole, here's a hole, here's a hole. It would be like these fingers right here. There are some people who think that if you close a hole with a pad of your finger, close your hole with a pad of your finger, like you keep your hand slightly curved and you close the holes, that the tone is a little better in an open hold flute than it is on a closed flute. You wouldn't even think about it unless you're a professional, unless you're touring with an orchestra, where a slight change might be important. I would say that most people, if you were listening to some kind of a recording, you wouldn't know the difference. They wouldn't know the difference. The sound is so close that it wouldn't matter to most people. Most people wouldn't even notice a difference, but for a professional player, they might notice a difference. Now, I had a student that had an open hold flute like this, but it was even more complicated like this because you could have it either closed or open. So there's a little bit of a lever that she could press down and all of the keys would pop up. The middle of the keys would pop up and you'd get this open hold effect. The keys would still be there, but they'd be all open. If she pressed the lever another way, it would slam all of those shut because there would be a little covering that would cover all of those up and it would be closed hold again, which is what most flutes are anyway. So I just wanted to mention that when you get an instrument such as the fife, it's going to be open hold. All of these fingerings here are all open hold. The only way to close them is with your hands. Now, I also want to mention while I'm about it and I'm thinking about it, hand positions. Hand positions are so important. I have seen students, especially piano students, but other students as well, try to keep their fingers stiff, you know, like this. They don't curve their fingers. They try to keep them stiff and keep them on top of the instrument. And that's absolutely the wrong thing to do. Now, I have some friends of mine that are concert pianists, and my sister was trained as a concert pianist, and they were always telling them, don't let your hands be flat, because if they're flat and you have to play something, you may not make the right note because you don't have any flexibility in your fingers. If I were to take a recorder and hold it flat, and supposing I'm only playing GAB, so what did I do? I put my finger down here because I needed an F sharp. Just on the last measure, I did an F sharp. If my fingers had been flattened and stiff, I wouldn't have been able to be sure to get that note. As a matter of fact, the finger wouldn't be in the right position. You need to always keep your fingers slightly curved. I mean, not majorly curved, but slightly curved, and use the fingers that you need, but the other fingers that you're not using have to be ready to be used in case you need to use them for notes. So you keep them lightly curved, you keep them above the notes that they would work on if you were to use them, and then it's very simple to put one down for an F sharp, or put 2 down for an E, or put 3 down for a D. It's simple to do that. Once you get them stiff, then you can't really get them so that they easily reach the keys that you want, and many times you miss the keys. So I know for piano students, they're always telling them, don't flatten your hands. I've seen so many people who are playing the piano, and the wrist goes up, and the fingers are like this, and they're playing like this, you know, and it must be bad on the wrist. It must be very uncomfortable on the wrist. The other thing is it's certainly not good technique in order to get the notes that you need. So fingers curved, even on the piano, just like I have mine slightly down so that it's a more natural position, hands are curved, and then I have the freedom, if I was playing piano, to get the different key patterns, different notes and so forth, without being stiff and without hoping that I meet them. So it's just a word of advice if you're learning other instruments. So this is a closed instrument, but you do have some flutes that you can make it partly open or open instrument, depending upon whether you have holes in the keys that normally would be closed. There's all kinds of differences in the mouthpieces of these instruments. Now, I want to focus on the fact that there's lots and lots of similarity between the woodwind instruments. But on this piccolo and the flute, it would be the same. There's this little lip plate. It's a built-up area around the mouthpiece. The mouthpiece is this hole right here, and then around it is this little thing, and it's called a lip plate. And you put it so that this is on your chin, right under your lower lip, and then you blow across it. Now, one thing that's different about a fife, let me just have that so that's clearer. I'm just trying to show it so it'll be the most clear. I mean, it's not really hard to see. If I get it right, it's not really hard to see that lip plate, which is right up here. Now, if I take a fife, I did bring in a fife, and the fife does not have a tone hole in the back or any kind of an octave mechanism in the back. It's really plain. But this is the mouthpiece. It's a perfect circle, and there's no lip plate. You blow across it. You use the same kind of technique. It's underneath your lower lip, but you blow across it, but there's no lip plate. The shape of the mouthpiece, it's just really a curve. That's all it is, just a circle. And you find that with the piccolo, it's also a circle. I think that the flutes may be a little bit more elongated, but that lip plate is there. Now you can see it all right. The mouthpiece surrounded by the lip plate, and it sticks out on one side. There's all kinds of differences, even though there's a lot alike. Now, I started the other day, this is end blown. This is an end-blown flute. It comes from Morocco, and I had a little trouble getting used to it because it has a flat top. Now, this flat top, there's no curviness. There's no shape like you get on a recorder where it kind of swoops up and levels off on top. There's nothing like that. It just is a flat top, and in that flat top is a little crack. If you can see it, it's going to be just like a little bit of a crack, like a little rounded area. That's the mouthpiece. That amounts to the mouthpiece. So where's the labium? The labium is going to be on the back side of the instrument. It's going to be different. Here you have the notes. You have the tone holes, which you have to have in front of you to be able to play them. And then the labium is on this back side. And then the little crack, it's just a little tiny crack, but it's been carefully measured, I think, because it plays well. This one plays very well. Some do and some don't. And you blow in here where the mouthpiece is, but you can't have your mouth covering the labium. If you do, you're not going to get any tone. So this is the labium where I'm putting my finger. You can see it. It looks like a hole. And right on top of that, on top of it is a little crack. I don't know if I'm holding this well enough, but you can see it. It'll appear to be on your left. That's the mouthpiece and the labium underneath it. But the holes, you see, are, if you put the holes where they have to be, then you're going to find that your labium is on the back side of the instrument, your tone holes in front, and that little crack toward the back of the instrument, but it's on that flat top. So you have got to cover that little crack, which is the mouthpiece. I've got my finger pointing to it. I'm looking at the monitor because I want to see what you're seeing. and then your labium is right here, and you can't cover that. So you've got to put your mouth here and still leave this open. And you can't put your mouth over there. It has to be right over here. So you have a very small space that you're going to be able to use it. But it does work. And I don't know how they thought of this, but it does work. Oops, I don't have my fingers exactly in the right position, but you get the idea. Now, and very expensive ones, they play quite well. But I can't get used, I'm having trouble getting used to the fact that I have to cover that, but I can't cover this, which is right beside it, just right down that pipe. But that's an end-blown flute, and they do work. And I've talked a lot about the block, and I remember bringing in this instrument, which is translucent, and you can see the block is white, and you can see through it. So you see the relative size of the block, and it stops right here, right above where the labium is. Now, I did a kind of drawing of it. I never used the drawing, so I'm going to use it now. And if I were to draw out the recorder in the way that it's made, this is the way that the mouthpiece is shaped, and you can tell just by looking at it. And the block is going to be right here. It's going to be coming up, and that's a part of the mouthpiece. And then there's a little line right here where it flattens itself off, and that's where you blow your air. Not over that whole thing, but just over this side of it. That block goes down here. This is the front side of the instrument. So that block goes down here, and then it flattens itself out, and then it goes around, and then it goes around to the end, and it ends right here, and then the labium is right here. Does that make any sense? This is the front of the instrument. This is the labium. This is the three holes for the thumb, for the first three notes. This is the thumb hole in the back, so that the block is from here, and there's a little space here between that block and where the outside of the instrument is. It bulges out a little bit, so you blow right in here, not on that whole thing, but a little here where that little area is, that's the mouthpiece. I'm not sure how it's going to look. I don't think it's going to look dark, but if I can just put it so you can see it, and the air just goes on this side. This is the windway, and then the labium is right here. Maybe you can see it better if I turn it this way. I really want you to see this, because this is how the recorders are made. They're difficult in terms of the way that they're made. They're not difficult. But the thing is, it is important to understand that. And of course, you have the plastic of the instrument that goes a little above the lowest part of the block, and then just swings up, and this becomes the back side of the mouthpiece, and then it stops here. You blow in here, it goes down here, it gets to the labium. This is your thumb hole, and B-A-G, that's what those notes would be. So it's really quite simple in terms of the way that it has worked, that it's been designed. But the idea is that even though it's simple, it still is interesting to see how it's made, because it has the capability of playing lots and lots of music. It can't play every key, but it can play many keys. As a matter of fact, I do a lot of Handel's Messiah that I've specially arranged for recorders, and most people would say a recorder's not capable of doing that, especially these little ones that are, a lot of the Messiah is written in the key of D, but I can adapt it and it does very well. A simple made instrument, but it can do many kinds of recordings. It can play many, many types of music. Now there are a lot of similarities. This little guy is a recorder, but it's kind of half toy, half real recorder, but it plays real well. It's very, very small. I got it at Wendy's. I bought it at Wendy's. I saw that and I said, oh, I gotta have that. And it plays quite well. And I don't think you can see it from here. You may not be able to. The block is exactly the same color as the rest of the green of the instrument. And I can see it here. There's like a little outline around the outside of it where the block actually is. I can see like a little line where it is. It's not just one piece. It has been set in as a block. And it does quite well. Actually, it really does quite well. It's very small, but doesn't matter. You can make music out of a lot of things. This is a little sweet tone. It has the same fingering pattern, B, A, G, F, E, D. And it's put out by a company in England. And let's see. This is a German recorder. They're made the same way. You can see a little bit about where the block would be. It's a little bit of discoloration, but it's about the same. And you have your song. This is a tonette. I thought I had a song flute here. I do somewhere. This is a tonette, same type of fingering pattern and same kind of shape to the mouthpiece. There's lots of similarity. And the flutophone plays a scale exactly like the saxophone does for the most part. There's like one note difference. And it has a pretty good tone, and it has the same kind of fingering pattern. You don't see a block here, but it's the same shaped mouthpiece as what the recorders have, and it plays really well, and it has a really good tone. I like the flutophones. So they can't do as much as a recorder can do, but they're good little instruments. So you can see that there are differences, but there's a lot of similarities between them. Why do I bring this in? Once you've learned how to play a recorder, there are lots of instruments you can also play that are very much like a recorder. I mean, I play song flutes and tonettes and all of that, and I play the end-blown instruments and all of that. So, and I didn't take special lessons on them. As a matter of fact, one of my friends came to me and said, Pat, have you tried the penny whistles? I was in an orchestra, and I said, no. And she says, you got to try them. They're so much fun, and they're easy to play. I went out and I bought probably 5 or 6, and they were a lot of fun, and they're easy to play. So you just have to stop and think of what's available, and once you learn a major instrument and understand the way it is and the way it's been built and what it can play and what it can't play, then you can adapt all of that knowledge to other instruments that you're also playing. So it's we're about out of time. I'm going to close it here. We'll continue with this next time. Please join me then.